We're going to do pretty much the same thing we done with the door. We're just going to replicate one of these segments, and I'm going to press Alt G and I'll snap that to the center. I don't want all this clutter here, so I'm going to keep one of each and I will delete the rest. I'll just move them off until they're needed again. Right, so I'm going to start with a very simple basic square window to start, and we'll do more decorative types as well, but for the moment, just for the sake of understanding what's going on, I'm just going to keep it simple again. I will press tab, I'll go into edit mode, and I'm going to press Ctrl or throw in some loop cuts. And I'm not too worried at the moment about how and where I'm putting these. I just want to put in the cuts first, and I'll match to the grid. Although that looks a little off. Hang on, something didn't snap there for me. I'll bring this down manually. And I'll need to check my view, and no, where do I check it? Yeah, so 0.9. Okay, I'm going to want to snap this to 1. Now, I'm perfectly online there. Right, and I'll do the same here. Again, I think I'm going to use the mirror function on this, so I know I'm going to place this window perfectly centered. So I will come out of orthographic and I'm going to press Ctrl or, and I'm going to put one cut straight down the middle. To show that again, I press Ctrl or, and that's going to show where the middle is. If I click once on left click, it'll let me reposition this whichever way I want. If I want to snap that directly to the middle, I just right click it and it'll snap right back. So that's a handy way to place this line exactly where you want. Right, now I'm going to select that loop and X and delete faces, and I will press L on the floating segment here, X and delete faces there too. L basically is it's a select all function. It'll select every polygon that's connected. So I press L once, it will select everything because they're all connected by vertices there. Right, so I will select this guy here, and I'm going to go to modifiers, which is this little guy here, and I'm going to add a mirror. So it's mirroring down across the X. I'm probably going to be repeating myself a lot. It's just a force of habit I have, so bear with me. I'm going to use the center snap for this one as well, and I'll just get rid of these middle pieces. X and faces. Right, and we'll just fill in. Select those two edges, press F. That'll throw a face between them. Alright, okay, so now it's gonna match this up and see how it looks. I might want to adjust this and make it a little smaller. I want to put my snap back on for this and just pull it across. And press the period key to zoom in on this object. So I could probably actually, I think it's a little narrow looking. So I'll go into orthographic again, and because this is mirrored, I'll press these two little squares here. That will go into X-ray and come into edit mode. I want to select vertices, and I'll click and drag over the middle section here because I want to drag this section of the wall out. And as I drag that, I'll take snap off for this, I think. As I drag this out, the mirror will also mirror that for me, so that's pretty okay there. Yeah, that's a little better, I think. We will do many variants of different types of windows. We'll do some doubles. We'll do some round ones as well. But just to kind of get people in the habit of using the mirror and why it's beneficial in these kind of structures as well, I'm just going to keep it as simple as possible. So with that then, I think the next logical step would probably be, actually we'll make a double one now. Let's just do it. I'll select this and Shift D to duplicate it. I'm just going to drag it to the side and press Alt G and snap that to the center. Now, so because we want to make this one a double, I'm going to use the process I've done before. I'm going into edit mode. I want this pivot point to stay in the center. So I'm going to press on polygons, A to select everything, and I'm going to, with my snap turned on, I'm just going to pull this to the left. So that will keep the pivot point in the center of the world, and it'll give me 2 bars. If you consider each one of those grid spaces a bar, it'll give me a double side then. And again, I'm going to throw mirror onto this, and there we go. So I'm going to make sure that the window height is matching on this. So I just want to borrow the segment for a second and pull it over, and I'm going to use it to line up my guides or my cuts so that the windows are the same height. So I'll come back into edit mode, press tab, select edges, and I'm going to press Control R. It's going to put me in the center, so I will grab this and I'm just going to pull it up. We can be rough here, we don't need to be too specific because we're going to line it all up properly. And I'll throw one down the bottom as well. And now if I snap into orthographic by clicking on the little little Y here, we can see this. Actually, I'll turn on X-ray, so we can see that it's following the ticker grid line along the top. So that's matching up there perfectly, and down here it's doing the same. It's a little high here, so we know that this is a height of 1. I want to snap the Z axis to 1. There we go. And now, because this one is going to be mirrored, we're just going to put another edge loop down the center here. And I want this to be a double window, so I'm going to select these 2 points that can come out of X-ray and delete them. Press X and delete face. We just need to get rid of these middle sections then as well. Actually, we can get rid of the inside. Don't need them. Right, now that's too squared. I want it to be more rectangular, so I will go back. If it behaves itself, I'll go back into orthographic, and I will select the active mirror side. So the active side is the side with your polygons. Remember, this is actually not yet geometry, not until you apply the modifier. So I'll pull this along the x-axis. I'm only pulling one side, so I need to go into X-ray, and that'll allow me to select the vertices through the mesh. So with that, I'll come out of X-ray again, and I'm going to pull it a couple bars over. I'll actually just grab those other vertices as well and pull it maybe there. Do that for the moment. And again, we can make variations to this. Like, we can just as quickly grab this, duplicate it. I didn't snap that properly, so why are you not working? Oh, because I'm pressing Control D. It's Shift D to duplicate it. And I'll go into X-ray, edit in vertex mode. I'm going to select these middle guys here, and I'll press the S key, and I'm going to just scroll my mouse down. You see it's kind of pinching in. While I'm scrolling, if I click the middle mouse, it'll lock it just to the Z-axis that I'm scaling. So I can make different sizes of windows as well if wanted. I could actually move them up as well. So there's really a lot of design choices you can actually do with this. But that is just for the purpose of example for the moment. I'm not going to do that yet, so I'm going to get rid of this. Just to show you that you can actually create many different designs just from the one object. Just duplicate it and make your changes. As long as the grid is set up and it's snapping effectively, you're good to go. You can be as creative as you want with this. So I want to just close off these faces. Right, so that's 2 different window varieties we have now. Alright, so now the next logical step, I guess, would be we're going to start making frames for the windows, I think. And then we'll need to consider how the roof is going to set up. A lot of people have problems when it comes to like getting the 45-degree angle correct, and then there's the overhang tends to look a bit funny as well. And they're going to be done pretty much the same way that we done this corner here. It's using the shear tool, so you can't really go wrong when you use that. As long as you're sticking to whole numbers like 1, 2, and you're using your grid, it's pretty simple, and we can modify the vertices then as we want to get close any gaps, and it's all done using the transform dials up here. We'll be typing in manually basically the numbers that we want, but I'll probably move on to that after I throw in a door and get some windows onto this as well. When you're considering the framing for your windows and your doors, you gotta also consider what sort of segment you're making. For the moment, what I've been setting up here are mostly interiors. The thing about this is they're made for interior because they're not thick enough, but I kind of considered, while not recording, that I might show you also how to take these segments we have made and how to make them for exterior as well. And all we're doing really for that is adding thickness to them. But the thing is, we're only going to be adding thickness on one side, so there's a little bit of a different setup when it comes to especially units like the corner, because it's going to be wider on one side, and if I was to rotate this, it won't match up because it's only on one side. And I'm going to show you that one first. But before we get a corner segment and give that thickness, I need to figure out how much thickness I want to actually give it first. So if we take this and consider all these pieces that we've already made as interior props, I'm going to duplicate our plain old segment here, and I want to kind of just compare them from the top and just see the thickness. So we know that this one here is 2 bars thick on either side. I want to double this on 1. So I'm going to make them for the exterior wall segment. I want to make it 4 bars on the front facing side. So I'm going to grab polygon mode and select the front poly, and again I'll go into orthographic, and I want to snap down close to the bar, so or close to the grid here, so when I move this, it's going to move one smaller grid point at a time. And that's roughly the kind of thickness I want for an exterior wall, but I want to replicate that as well on each of the other segments. So I'll pull him forward, and now I'll grab the 2 windows. I will Shift D and pull them forward, and I'm going to do the exact same thing for these. Because these are mirrored, I only have to do half. And I hope my reasoning for this will make sense for you in a second. It's just when it comes to doing the corner unit as well, it's a little more awkward because the pivot point can cause you some problems. So again, I'm moving this 2 grid spaces forward. Now this is the problem child here, because you can't just pull one side forward and then the other. Or can you actually? That's a question. I don't think I've ever tried it this way, which is probably stupid because it is by far the simplest way. Let's give it a go. Can I just take this segment and move him 2 bars forward, and then this, and move him on the x-axis 2 bars. Well, it turns out you can. See, there's me overthinking things again. But the problem now with the pivot point, as far as I'm aware, is if I was to duplicate this, so I'll pull this down, and one thing I kind of showed with this piece here was I can take this one and I can duplicate this, and no matter what way I then rotate this, because the way the pivot is set up, the walls will match up perfectly. So I can take this guy again, duplicate him, and say I want to turn him now the opposite direction. I know that it's still going to line up because we were considerate about where that pivot is. So we got a seamless wall regardless of what angle we're turning at. It's not the same now for this one. because if I was to rotate him, it'll match up fine here. But if I was to repeat the step for this angle, now with the snap function turned on, you see the problem. The pivot will not snap directly to this anymore. It's because there's an offset that's on one side only. So we need to consider then, how are we gonna make a unit that could cover those angles? And it's as simple actually really as just reducing it from this side and adding it onto the other one. You'd be left with two separate corner segments, each for a different angle, but it will do the trick. But you have to remember which one is your face side, and that'll be important when it comes to texturing as well. So I will again grab a duplicate of the corner, just the interior corner, and I'll pull them over in line with him. These are no good. So all I'm doing is the exact same process that I didn't know about at first. Now there you go. I'm going to select this side and I'm going to bring the inside faces 2 grid points. 2 grid points out. And now that should fix our problems when it comes to doing inside corners. So if I was to rotate this fella here to 90 degrees and with my snap turned on, will he line up for me? He will. So if you can imagine, you're looking at the exterior of a house here. These are going to be your front faces, and these are going to be your inside ones. So like your exterior face, your inside face, interior face I should say. And so I want to keep these separated because I don't want to get them confused. So I'll leave one beside the other like that. Now, with that done, I will do the door and I'll move on to then do the frames. So I'll duplicate the door out and I'm going to select the exterior faces. I'll go top view and move it out too. Right, and then my reason for that was because when I'm making when I'm going to be doing like a door frame and a door for this, same with like the interior windows as well. Let's just call that an office window because I know a lot of people don't have windows inside their homes. But then again, it's not necessarily built for a house. This could be applied to pretty much any structure. You can invent one, you know. So an easy way to do that would be if I select the inside faces here and I press Shift and D to duplicate them. That's all I wanted there. And P will separate it. So when I press P, I'll get this little menu here. I want to separate by selection. Basically only going to separate the selected faces. So now I have a separate object. And I'm going to use this as the wooden part of that door frame. So the wall is going to protrude out past it, but a couple inches in, we're going to see where the frame starts. So I will first, I'll press tab to go into edit mode. I want to select my edges and I'm going to select these outside facing edges. And I want a bit more control over this, so I'm going to turn snap off and I'll just slowly pull that back till we can see where the orange line is lining up. So say we want this much of it to remain as a exterior face brick. So if you imagine when you texture this, it's going to be a brick texture up as far as that orange line. And the rest now we just need to give a bit of thickness to it. So if I press tab to come away from my edit mode I'm going to add that thickness with another modifier. So in my modifier tab here, add modifier, I'm going to select solidify. And solidify basically just adds a thickness onto it. You can see it's kind of facing interior when I add thickness, so it's going into the wall. I just want to bring this into the minus value and it'll pull it out. And you can probably see from that angle as well, there's a dip happening. Like if I isolate this by pressing / and I go into orthographic, pressing Y, you can see that there's a dip that occurs. It's not straight. And that's one drawback that the solidify modifier has. It doesn't actually keep the edges, but there is a setting on it. If you select even thickness, it will keep that even thickness on your corners too. So make sure that's checked when you're doing your extrusion. And now you can just hold shift. I'd recommend doing that. When you hold shift and move this dial, you get a much more slower controlled adjustment than without shift. It's very hard to adjust it. So hold shift and just find the thickness that you want. To get the best judgment on that, I'm going to press the / again just to come out of isolation there. Although I do want this to be in the foreground with nothing behind it so we can see that thickness a little better. So I press the period key will show the focus on me on the selection. There we go. And go back into front facing. And now I'll just adjust that thickness a little further. It's pretty hard to see on the monitor I'm using. I hope that people watching this can actually see it a little better. Alright, so that's going to be the wooden part of the frame. We can actually, for the interior face, we don't want to be so flush. So I'll probably actually grab the back edges too. And with snap turned off, because I want fine control over this, I'm just going to pull this back a little further, just so that it's sticking out past the wall, almost ornamentally there. But like the shadow will catch on that. Once you apply ambient occlusion on that, it'll catch and it'll give a much nicer framed effect to it as well. So that's one section of our outside frame. And if you can imagine then, when the door's in this and that's closing over, we need something that's going to stop that door from passing by. So we're actually going to need to make another one of these. So what I'll do is, I think I'm happy enough with that. I'm going to apply this modifier by clicking on this little down arrow and click apply. And then what I can do is add a loop cut into this. So Control R, and I will cut that. I want to bring it so that the door will stop here, say. And then with polygon selected, I'm actually going to move this center line. I don't need it. So if I hold Alt and click that line, it'll select the loop. I'll press X and dissolve edges. I don't need that there anymore, so it's just adding extra geometry that isn't necessary. So I want to select these outside faces here. And with them selected, if I come over to my side panel here, I go to extrude. If I click and hold this, I want to extrude along normals. That'll drag each face out directly from the direction it's facing, rather than all joining one area or towards one point. We want this to have individual normals. So if I have to click that or select them again, and then with that, if I hold shift and I just drag on this little, it lets me. I'm just going to move that up, and you can see it pulling the face out as well. And that slight little face is all we need. And then the door will tuck in behind that, so we don't need to worry too much more about that. That's perfect for me though. But although I extruded this flush, it means I now also don't need these edges. So I'm going to select them and press X and dissolve edges. Now there's probably a little cleanup you need to do at the bottom. It's not, although these bottom faces we will not see, so I add extra geometry onto this. Select each of those faces and I will delete faces. Just kind of clean up your geometry as you go. I think it'll in the long run you'll appreciate it too. Alright, so that's an exterior frame done. We can throw a temporary door into this very quickly. I'll actually just grab my wall, turn on snap, bring that over. I want to line that up in front. And then when I go to X-ray mode, because I have this pivot point centered here, I'll just press S, and as I move my mouse down, it'll scale down. And I want to get the thickness first, so I want to line up roughly. If I bring this to the back, because we have to stop in the back here. No, we don't. We have to stop in the front. Yeah, it's kind of hard to see. I might turn wireframe on for this. So for wireframe, if I click on these two circles and just turn on wireframe, it'll give me a black wireframe that will help me see through this geometry a little better. I want to follow. So there's my stop line here. I want the door to match up perfectly with that. It does on one side here. So what I can do is come into edit mode, grab my vertices, and I'm going to select one side. I want to turn off snap. I want to zoom in as far as I can on this. And I'm going to press G to move. G is a grab, by the way. If you press G, you can then pull the geometry around. As such. If I want to snap it that I'm only going in one direction, again, I just, as I'm moving this, I click down the middle mouse button and it'll snap to either Z or X, depending on which direction you're dragging your mouse. So if I drag along the X and click that middle, it'll snap to X. If I was to drag it along the Z axis and click, it'll snap down to Z. It's a handy little feature. So I want to B to grab, and I want to click middle mouse along the X axis, and I just want to bring this so that it lines up with that almost hard to see grey line in the back. I'll do the same on this side. I could probably adjust this a little. Yeah, so it's a little far on this side. I want to pull that in about that much. And now it's a case of we'll just select the top and we'll bring it up to the top of the door there. So that's a grand makeshift door, a little thick. So what I can do again is press S. I'm scaling this. I want to drag it in the Y direction, the Y axis, and press the middle mouse, and now it'll just limit my scale to just along that Y axis. So we'll come back to that later. For the moment, it's a very, very simple door. Actually, it's too simple. That would annoy me looking at that. I kind of want that to look a little more like a door. So what I can do would be very quick. I'll just throw a loop cut along the center, running vertically and horizontally, and I'll select each face, front and back. And now if I press I, it's going to inset. So I want to inset. Let's go that much. And now, before I do anything else, I want to click, as this little window opened up here, I want to turn it from as it is. I want to check on individual. That will now inset every individual face. And with that, I can press I to inset one more time, and it'll give me this smaller inset. And then I want to press S and drag my mouse on the Y axis and middle click, and it'll just pull those faces inwards, and we'll have a little better representation of a doorway. We can fix up this geometry later. This is just a temporary thing. So I will actually go into vertice mode, and into X-ray I want to move these bottom verts up a little, just because there's usually a wider kickboard there along the bottom, and maybe even something similar on the top, maybe not as wide, but something like that. Now that's a little more door-like, but again, it's only temporary. I'll probably end up doing like an ornamental door for these. Now, that's one exterior door done. I'll just turn the wireframe off on this for a second and see how it's looking. Not bad. Alright, so I'll use a similar function and I'll throw in some window frames on the next.